Welcome to part 2. If you run a business with a lot to do, then there's only so much unique content you can create in a day, and there's probably only so many witty things that you can think of to say that your audience will be likely to enjoy. The good news, though, is that a fair amount of your content can be derivative or outright stolen. A lot of business is about connecting a supplier with a consumer. If you own a supermarket, for example, then it will be your job to buy groceries at a low wholesale price and then sell them on at a higher retail price to your customers. You aren't creating anything new, you're just acting as the middleman and getting paid for it. Running a Twitter account is often very similar to this, and in many ways your job is now to scour the web for useful and interesting content, for news and stories, and then to share that with your audience. It might feel a bit odd that you're essentially profiting from somebody else's hard work, but think of it instead as finding an audience for something that someone else has created, while at the same time curating content for a market that you know will love it. That's a great service you're providing. And it just so happens that this process is also a great way for you to keep your Twitter account active with great new content, and it involves barely any work on your part. So make sure that you're continuously reading up on topics relating to your business. This means you should be reading other blogs, following other Twitter users, and reading magazines. Now when you find a news item that you think your audience will genuinely enjoy, you should share it with them. Make sure you don't keep sharing from the same place, and try to find things they probably wouldn't have been able to find on their own. If your blog is about fitness, then perhaps you might share the results of a new study looking at a surprising new training method. If you run a B2B business, then perhaps you might share the results of a recent survey on types of business. Note, though, that when you do share new content, you should always add your own comment on the matter if possible. This way, you personalize that link, and if it gets shared even more, then people will be introduced to your brand and to your ethos, rather than simply ignoring who shared it altogether. So, if you found a study on a new muscle-building supplement, your comment might be, "This could certainly help me to lose my spare tire if it works on humans." And you have the URL, and hashtag supplements, hashtag fitness, hashtag fat burning. Or, "Let's see how many con artists jump on this dubious study." And again the URL, hashtag snake oil, hashtag research, hashtag fitness industry. Either way, you're now not only sharing something that your audience will be interested in, but you're also doing it in a way that introduces people to your point of view and beliefs. Do note, though, that the posts I just mentioned aren't terribly clickable. If you want more people to take notice of your link and follow it, then you may need to sell the value proposition a little. For example, "It's early days, but the results of this study on mitochondrial function could completely change my pre-workout stack." The URL, and then hashtag excited, hashtag mitochondria, hashtag fat burning. This will grab more attention because it provides a little more information. We know that it's about mitochondrial function, and because it shows the potential implications and how they might be relevant to your audience. Doing this is important because it will make your feed look more interesting, and it will increase engagement with your content so that more people actually read it and come away with a positive experience. Don't go overboard with hyperbole, though. If people think you're all hype and no substance, they'll quickly stop caring what you have to say. Just a note, but when you share a link on Twitter, you should shorten it, giving you more space to add your thoughts. You can use the website Bitly to do this for you, and you'll find out more about it at bitly.com. Obviously, the very easiest way to share content on Twitter, though, is just to hit retweet. Again, you can do this while adding your own commentary, and it's a great way to encourage more discussion. There is one type of content that the average business gets right, though, and that's to talk about deals. This is something that surveys suggest followers do like to hear because, of course, it provides them with value in the money that they can save. This is also a great way to reward your visitors for following you and to make them feel special. If you have a product or service then, make sure you occasionally offer promotions to your Twitter followers, and this is also a good way to get retweets if your followers know others who might benefit from what you sell. Giveaways are even better. If you can give away a free ebook, a free drink, or something else for nothing, then it's bound to grab some attention and will win some goodwill. We'll be coming back to this in a subsequent video. All this advice should help you to start adding real value to your Twitter account, which will make a massive difference to the way you're seen by your followers and ultimately to how many people choose to start following you. This is far preferable to talking entirely about your products and services without actually offering anything in return. Unfortunately though, some businesses are going to be resistant to this idea. This is a problem that many social media marketing agencies will face. They approach a company like our imaginary EPOS business and present them with a strategy. The problem is, the EPOS company thinks it's unprofessional to talk about business as a whole or subjects they feel are off topic. They don't want to showcase other companies by retweeting or sharing links, and they certainly don't want to be seen as having an opinion. Don't be that company. Playing it safe is actually the surest way to appear out of touch, uninteresting and uninspired. It might feel a little risky at first to appear conversational or to discuss a wider range of topics, but that's precisely what will make you interesting. What's key is simply that your business has a clear identity and mission statement. As long as you adhere to that at all times, being a bit more adventurous with your content will pay off. If you do choose to use an agency for your digital and social media marketing, make sure they're thinking along these lines. By now, you should have a fairly good understanding of what Twitter is and how to achieve success with it. You know what Twitter's strengths are, you know how to set up an account, and you know how to make this part of a larger brand and synergistic digital marketing strategy. Also, you have created lots of inroads to your brand and ensured there are plenty of ways for people to find you. On top of that, you're now filling your account with great content that will attract more followers, keep existing followers interested, and encourage lots of retweets and shares. This alone is enough to ensure that you have a steady momentum and that your blog will grow over time. Unfortunately though, it's still going to be a slow process if that's all you're doing, and it still involves a lot of work. That's why these next two videos are so important. This video is about working smart with Twitter instead of working hard. It's about streamlining your Twitter workflow, and it's about learning how to get more done in less time. Better yet, the next video is about finding ways to hack your growth and to jump straight to the top, leapfrogging your competition along the way. For those who have read The 4-Hour Workweek, this approach should be fairly familiar. This is about applying that 80-20 rule to your Twitter marketing efforts and putting more time into the aspects that get the real results. At the start of this series, we mentioned how Twitter had grown and now came with a host of tools and other features that you could benefit from, making it even more powerful. The following are just some tools that you can start using to make succeeding on Twitter that much easier and that much less work. First of all, there's Buffer. Buffer is a very simple tool that Twitter fans love. The idea is that you can buffer your tweets, essentially by queuing them so that they post automatically at set times. The thing to recognize here is that having a Twitter account that is completely quiet and empty is one of the worst mistakes that you can make. If your Twitter account has been abandoned and you haven't posted anything in the last 2 months, this will lead people to wonder whether you might have gone out of business. In the best case scenario, it will look as though you don't have the resources or the know-how to use Twitter, or as though you don't understand its importance. In short, it'll make you look unprofessional and thereby do more damage than having no Twitter account at all. Buffer gets around this problem by guaranteeing a steady flow of content, while also reducing the amount of time that you spend creating it. That's because you can set aside a few hours and write, say, 1,000 generic Twitter posts, and then let them be published every day for the next 1,000 days. No matter what happens, your Twitter will never be empty. And you can sign up at buffer.com. Then there's Hootsuite. And Hootsuite is not one social media tool, but really several built into one very convenient platform. And it has a lot of powerful features. For starters, Hootsuite could do everything that Buffer can. Buffer is better suited to people who don't want to deal with all the complicated functions available through Hootsuite. But at the same time, Hootsuite does let you manage multiple accounts. It lets you see various different social media streams in one place, and it lets more than one person log in, which can be very useful for teams who share their media duties. It makes cross-posting useful, and it even emails you with free reports. If you're serious about your social media and you've been around long enough to have a basic understanding of how it all works, then you should find that Hootsuite helps to streamline the whole process for you. This is a paid-for service, but at the time that I'm making this video, there is a 30-day free trial offer, and you can find out more at hootsuite.com. Another tool is IFTTT. Enough good things cannot be said about this incredible tool. IFTTT stands for If This Then That, a familiar phrase to anyone with a little experience in programming. What this does is to list all your different social media accounts and all your online apps together by creating recipes. Recipes are comprised of some kind of trigger event and an action that this causes. So for example, you can set up a recipe so that every time you post a comment to Facebook, it's also posted to Twitter. But it gets far more advanced than that. You can set up IFTTT to save all your tweets to a spreadsheet on Google Drive. You could also get IFTTT to share Instagram photos with a certain tag to Twitter, so that only certain types of content get shared. You can even do things like controlling the temperature of your house via Nest by sending emails. This is an incredibly powerful tool and has almost unlimited uses. Think creatively and you should find it has plenty of potential for your Twitter marketing campaign. How about setting up IFTTT so that topics that get upvoted enough in a certain subreddit get shared to your Twitter? That way you'll have completely automated and highly relevant content for your Twitter account. And you can sign up at ifttt.com. Finally, there's BuzzSumo. BuzzSumo is a tool that allows you to quickly find content in a specific niche that's performing well on social media. Once you're using the tool, you'll be able to easily browse through various different posts that are getting a lot of attention. From there, you can share them to your own social media accounts. This is useful because it saves time and provides a quick and simple way for you to find more content. What's even better, though, is that you know this content is performing well and getting lots of shares, so it's likely to get you lots of shares too. Even if you don't share the actual content on BuzzSumo, you can always use it just to see what kinds of things are performing well. This way, you can get ideas for your own type of content and get a quick overview of how your niche or industry is performing. And you can find out more here at buzzsumo.com. A word of warning though, don't overdo the automation. If you use the right combination of tools and settings, then you should find that you can automate a great deal of your Twitter marketing. Even if you don't write regular posts anymore, your Twitter will now be populated with content on a recurring basis using Buffer, every time you post a new blog, every time you post a new YouTube video or like a YouTube video, every time something good comes up on Reddit, every time you post to Facebook, whenever you post to Instagram. Some marketers will even take this one step further and will have their Twitter accounts respond to comments automatically using bots. Now that's a lot of auto-generated content and a lot of time saved, and generally a great way to maximize your ROI for the time that you're putting in. But don't get too reliant on these methods for filling your needs. If you do this, you can end up with a social media channel that's entirely soulless and doesn't add any real value. Gone will be the personal insights, the tailored content to your market, or the lifestyle promotion that we discussed earlier. The same wording will be used every time for certain actions too. For example, I liked a video on YouTube, and then you have the URL. What's worse, you might even end up with duplicates of the same content, or with content that doesn't quite make any sense. If you use Buffer too much, you'll end up with content that doesn't express your mood, that doesn't reflect what's in the news, and is just frankly generic. It'll lack the spontaneity or relevance of content that you upload yourself. With Buffer, the posts come at the same time every day as well, and this alone can be enough to prevent those posts from seeming natural and organic. People will be able to tell you if your Twitter posts have no personality, so don't let this happen, and use these auto-generation techniques sparingly. This is only for keeping your social media channels active. The life and soul will come from you actually writing new content and reacting to what's going on in your life. There is a way you can create a compromise situation and streamline the process of uploading content and avoiding periods of no new posts, but while still writing it yourself. The simple trick is to download some apps for your various social media accounts such as Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and the official ones usually work best. Now it's really easy for you to comment on something that's happening or is on your mind, and it should only take a couple of minutes to do this whenever the inspiration strikes. And to prevent yourself from forgetting to do this, you can also set up some times of the day and some rules as to when and how you're going to post. For example, how about making the decision to post new content every time you go to the kitchen to make a cup of tea? You could even make this easier by having a separate tablet or smartphone just for posting to those accounts. Try taking an old Android tablet and keeping it in your kitchen with the Twitter app installed, or even leaving it on your assistant if you're not too worried about hygiene. While it's not a separate app or tool, Twitter Analytics is a very powerful force multiplier that belongs in your strategy and which can greatly enhance your effectiveness. To find Twitter Analytics, simply go to analytics.twitter.com/about. From here, you'll be able to log in and find your account statistics, and these will show you how you've been performing over the past month. These include tweets, how many tweets you've posted in that month. Tweet impressions, how many times your tweets have been shown. Profile visits, how many people have visited your profile. If this is much higher than your new followers, you need to ask why your profile isn't converting. Mentions, how many people have mentioned your brand. More about this later. Top tweet, which of your tweets got seen the most times? Top media tweet, which of your links got seen the most times? Top follower, which of your followers has the most followers and best engagements? Keep this in mind when we get to the section on influencer marketing later on. Top mention, which mention received the most attention and engagement? Use all this information to ascertain which parts of your campaign are working and which need more work. As a result, you can hone your process to ensure that you're maximizing your potential impact. You might think we've covered an awful lot of what makes Twitter tick at this point, but you're still missing out on something pretty important: the social aspect. So far we've only discussed creating content and putting things out there. But of course Twitter isn't just about output, it's about input too. This is a communication tool and a social network. In other words, you need to think about responding to comments as much as you think about creating posts from scratch. Better yet, you need to think about how you can encourage engagement and interaction. This will make a big difference to the way people see your brand, and it will greatly improve your chances of getting shared and retweeted. What's more, by leveraging this social engagement correctly, you can see sudden growth. This is where the growth hacking aspect comes in, so why don't we start with that? If you're new to Twitter and you post a tweet to your audience, then you may get it seen by, say, 100 people, maybe 1,000. And this is pretty good. If your post gets retweeted by one of those 1,000 people and they are an average user, then it may get seen by 100 to 300 more people on top of your original 1,000. This is also pretty good. Better yet, if someone enjoys that tweet, they might start following you. Thus, you've got a new follower. But imagine if your post were retweeted by someone like Bill Gates. Suddenly, that message would be seen by millions of users. He currently has 24.6 million followers, thousands of which would probably retweet it to their thousands of followers. Some of Bill Gates' own followers would probably have millions of followers in their own right, so this effect would be repeated potentially many times over. You would get hundreds of thousands of new followers this way and would increase your influence drastically overnight. That's a growth hack because you've gone to 1 million followers overnight instead of taking it the usual several years. This particular growth hack is using a technique called influencer marketing, where you're relying on the influence of someone already established on Twitter to give you that boost and that head start. Now, influencer marketing will always involve an element of luck, and you can never guarantee that it's going to work. Still though, it's well worth a try, and by targeting influence with content tailored for their appreciation, and even sometimes mentioning them in comments, you can potentially see amazing results. Oh, and a tip, don't go after Bill Gates right away. Instead, aim to start with smaller influencers, such as prominent members of your niche or your industry. Look for someone with about 1,000 followers and then someone with 100,000 followers and build your way up to the top. You can also get great success from mentioning other businesses and having them mention you. That way you can quickly share your followers with one another. This can even work with direct competitors, but you're more likely to be successful with business partners and companies that provide supplementary services to your own. If you build websites, then looking for an SEO company and promoting each other is a good strategy. Again though, aim for people who are on a similar level to you to begin with. Here's a quick tip for any kind of influencer marketing. Real-world strategies always work best. Too often people find the email address or the Twitter account of an influencer and think, great, a connection. In reality though, that person is not a connection. A connection is someone who actually feels that they know you, at least a little, and who is willing to help you out. You can accomplish this in 2 minutes if you meet someone in person, whereas it takes a lot longer to get to that level via emails. This is why networking events and trade shows are so valuable. Find the influencers, introduce yourself, and have a human chat. Do not try to get anything from them. Then, a few weeks later, post something related to what you spoke about, or perhaps that you think they'll find interesting, and then tag them. Don't force the issue, but your chances of a retweet just went up significantly. You can also use your real-world networking skills to get regular followers on board. If you run a retail store and someone visits, you can tweet a photo of them with you, or you can message them to say thanks. People love this as it feels a little like being famous, and if you're lucky they may retweet that message to their followers. This is particularly useful for local businesses. If they're a local customer, then chances are their connections also live locally. In the next video, I'll talk about some more ways you can engage with your audience.